This particular park has all 4 different types of volcanoes that are found in the world. And one unique thing about that is that it's highly concentrated, which is a fairly unusual thing. We just have diverse, rich resources. There's an area in the park in the northeast corner called Butte Lake, and that's kind of been my place where I like to go. There's the Cinder Cone Trail where you can hike, which is one of the types of volcanoes. So you're hiking on cinders, and it's really hard. It's a difficult hike, but it's definitely worth getting up to the top of that particular cinder cone. Obviously, fire is definitely a part of our ecosystem, so it's a big deal at Lassen. And we realized a while back, human suppression of fire is not necessarily the right answer.
Welcome to Who Runs This Park, a podcast where we uncover the untold stories of our national parks. Who Runs This Park is presented by Expert Voice. Gear up for adventure with Expert Voice, the outdoor gear source for industry experts. Outdoor brands like Big Agnes, Mammoth, La Sportiva, Chaco, and more offer discounts on Expert Voice of up to 60% off for industry experts like you. And you can join Expert Voice for free today and see what brands you qualify for. So, whatever the next adventure calls for, make sure you're prepared with expertvoice.com/parks and gear up for adventure. If you like chocolate, which may be a red flag if you don't, you have to try out Ritual Chocolate. Ritual Chocolate is my favorite chocolate brand by far, and I learned about them from spending a lot of time in Park City, Utah, where they're based nearby, and actually got to take my family to a chocolate tasting at their factory. And it totally changed the way we all think about and eat small batch chocolate. While I already loved the bars, it opened up my world to the variety and depth of flavor profiles chocolate can have. I'm excited to be sharing this with you all. Who Runs This Park listeners get 10% off their online purchases of Ritual Chocolate. Go to ritualchocolate.com, that's RITUAL chocolate.com, and use promo code WRTP for 10% off. You'll be thanking me later, I promise. And did I mention that I'm obsessed with their packaging? It's so beautiful, so even just having the bars and opening them is a treat. Get on it and order some chocolate. Today we have Roseann Worley with us, Lassen Volcanic National Park Superintendent. Lassen Volcanic National Park, located in Northeastern California, was the 15th national park established by Congress, making it one of the oldest in the nation. And I believe it was actually established the same year that the Park Service was established, in 1916. So a fun little tidbit. The park is known for its stunning volcanic landscapes and geothermal features, and is sometimes even referred to as a mini Yellowstone. Roseann herself has been superintendent since May of this year, after serving as acting superintendent at Lake Roosevelt National Recreation Area in Washington, and as the National Park Service Pacific West Region Internal Controls Program Lead. She's quickly making her mark at one of her favorite parks in the state of California after visiting in 2018, and I'm excited to learn more about her perspective of Lassen Volcanic and everything her team is doing to make sure it can be enjoyed for generations to come. Roseann, welcome to Who Runs This Park.
Thank you, Maddie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Can you share one of the crazier experiences you've had thus far as Lassen Volcanic Superintendent?
Well, just 2 months ago, I don't know if I had an answer, but I definitely have an answer as of today.
Yeah.
Just 4 weeks ago, we were impacted by the park fire that had started in Chico in Bidwell Park. So it was called the park fire because of that. We ended up having to evacuate our headquarters and all of our staff and all park housing. And then we closed the park for about 3 weeks. The thing about the park fire was that it, obviously Chico is about 50 miles away from the park, but because of the rate of spread of the fire, it was growing in the first 2 days at 4,000 to 5,000 acres per hour. So by the third day, had reached 350,000 acres. So it was the biggest wildland fire that we've seen this season. And it also became the 4th largest fire in California history.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
so
man.
We just had experienced the Dixie Fire in 2021, which is the 2nd largest fire in California history. So that particular fire entered the park and burned about 70% of the park. However, the park fire did not reach our boundary. It did not come to headquarters, but we were heavily impacted and we needed to evacuate. Right. So because the fire was moving so fast and the counties were issuing evacuation orders, we needed to move quickly. So what happened, the fire started on a Wednesday afternoon, and by Friday we were meeting with staff to prepare to evacuate. We thought we had a little more time, But as we were having the meeting Friday afternoon, around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, our particular area in Mineral, California, where our headquarters is, that zone went into an evacuation order. So while we were having the meeting, we decided we needed to move everybody out that evening. And so we made sure that people had time to gather things. And then we also, folks in park housing, we provided them hotel space so they could go and be somewhere. Yeah.
I was going to ask what people usually do in evacuations, like as hotels in like areas farther away, what usually happens?
We were creating an evacuation plan. For the most part, we established a safe haven, and that was generally Redding, California, which is about 30, 40 miles away from park headquarters, and it's an urban setting. So we, obviously that is a safer place to be. And plus, we needed a place that had multiple hotel options because that evening on Friday, all of the hotel space was getting rapidly taken up by multiple people being evacuated from different areas. And so me personally, I was evacuated from my home in Shingletown, California, which is on the northern side of the park. And so I didn't find a room until 1 a.m. in the morning. So it was a pretty intense experience for all of us.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
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 And it's scary how, like you said, was it the fourth largest fire in California history?
Yeah. To date, it's the fourth largest fire. Yep.
Yeah. And it's just scary that we're continuously getting up there with these, record-setting fires. I guess, what is the status of the park as we speak right now and of the park fire?
So all of the evacuation warnings have been lifted in all the counties. The fire is still active in a sense where it's not fully controlled. It's about 80% containment, I think, as of yesterday. And for us, we are doing a phased reopening. So about a week ago, we reopened the northern part of the park, which is Manzanita Lakeside. And then we are opening the southwest Kumyamani Visitor Center. It's in the southwest part of the park. That was open this past weekend. And then our campgrounds, we reopened them yesterday. So in time for the Labor Day weekend, we wanted to be able to make sure we were ready to go for Labor Day weekend for folks because it's kind of the big last weekend for everybody to enjoy the park.
Well, before it gets, my understanding is you guys get a lot of snow.
It snowed last weekend, actually.
No, it didn't.
It did. We had about 6 to 8
during the fire evacuation?
It kind of it timed out that it was right after we started repopulating the park. So about 6 to 8 inches at our highest elevation parking lot, which is the Lassen Peak parking lot. That was on Saturday. And then we had our road crews come out and clear the road. So we reopened back on Sunday.
But you had to have road crews clear out the snow. It was so much. That's insane. Oh my goodness. Can you share a little bit more about just kind of the generic story of Lassen Volcanic National Park? I know like how people usually recreate there, and just to give our listeners, I described it a little bit in the intro, but so people kind of know the geography and the land that we're talking about.
Like you said, we have some incredible geothermal features there. This particular park has all 4 different types of volcanoes that are found in the world. And one unique thing about that is that it's highly concentrated, which is a fairly unusual thing. We also are very rich in biodiversity. So we're kind of at the crossroads of 3 different areas, which is the southern part of the Cascade Range, northern part of the Sierra Nevada range, and then also part of the Great Basin. We just have diverse, rich resources that there's a confluence of all 3 of those types of areas. But like I said, it is very rich in geothermal features. So that's partly why the park was established because of that. And, the volcano, Lassen Peak volcano erupted in the early 1900s. So that was kind of the big... It's fairly recent
1914 and 1921, I read.
Yeah.
Just before this. And so that was even after the park was established.
Right. But I think the largest explosion was documented in 1915, the one that's kind of our known thing of, Mr. Loomis with all his photography of the area. But certainly, that our volcanic activity is kind of the biggest draw for sure.
Yeah, I saw in one of the things about the park, it was like, make sure you don't go off trail because there could be geothermal features. And there's not many parks in the U.S. that is a concern. So I thought that was interesting. Can you share a little bit about your first experience at Lassen Volcanic and how it kind of piqued your interest in the park when the position opened.
Like you said, it is like a little mini Yellowstone, but I think it's even better. It's smaller and things are more condensed and you can do a lot in a day there. It's just awe-inspiring. When you drive through our park highway, which kind of cuts through the park itself, it's just beautiful. It's amazing. You can get up to about 8,500 feet just with your vehicle. And then I hiked Lassen Peak. Probably not my first time there. I think it was the second or third time I was there, but it's a fairly accessible high elevation hike, which was amazing. Drew me to the park was its ability to get out and have the solitude. There's an area in the park in the northeast corner called Butte Lake, and that's kind of been my place where I like to go. There's the Cinder Cone Trail where you can hike, which is one of the types of volcanoes. So you're hiking on cinders, and it's really hard. It's a difficult hike, but it's definitely worth getting up to the top of that particular cinder cone for the views of Lassen Peak, as well as Painted Desert and the fantastic lava beds that are there. Beautiful landscapes. And then I've kayaked that a couple times, and that's just, you're out there essentially by yourself. And so it's just beautiful.
Really beautiful. Yeah, that's awesome. As you're continuing to familiarize yourself with the park as the superintendent, where have you been putting your focus and what do you hope to accomplish in the first year?
Oh, there's so much. But obviously fire is definitely a part of our ecosystem. So it's a big deal at Lassen. And there's been some headway with what we are doing with fire and are preparing for the next big fire event. For example, it's what we call our Northwest Gateway project. And we realized a while back, human suppression of fire is not necessarily the right answer. We have been planning to and doing some of the work where there's mechanical treatments of timber as well as prescribed burns. So we're looking to thin the forest and also just to make it healthier in order to provide for hopefully less severe and intense fire. If it were to go through these areas, we're trying to reduce the fuel load. And we realize that fire is a natural, like I said, it's a natural part of the ecosystem. So we want to utilize fire to make the forest more resilient. And we want to have the varied stands, varied sizes and varied types of timber, and then just to make it healthier and more resilient for the future. So that's a big deal. And then another big thing for me is we do have 8 affiliated tribes associated with the park. So I'm very interested in formalizing agreements with them and getting them more involved and partnering with them more and finding out what they would like to partner with us in the future. We haven't fully developed that, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that. We are a research and scientific park, so we do have relationships with the UC Davis. And so they have a field station established here, and there's a lot of research going on in the park. And I would love for that to expand and be able to, just for folks to learn and know more as we move into the future. Mm-hmm.
What type of research are they doing in the park?
Some of it's wildlife related, bear studies. And then we also have, not necessarily UC Davis, but we're doing pika studies and just seeing how they're resilient and how they've adapted to fire and that kind of thing. And then they also do capstone studies. So there's some geology classes that come there. And so it's just it's a wide swath of like different opportunities. And we just want to be able to provide a platform for people to come and do their research and for us to all learn and grow from what they find out.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, that there's the 4 types of volcanoes. That I didn't know that only 4 types of volcanoes existed in the world. So that's a big thing I learned. And then the other piece is that they're all, like you said, in a relatively concentrated area. And so if I was in a geology class or I was a geology major, it's kind of the spot to go to study that. So that's really cool. Going back a little bit in time, before being at Lassen Volcanic, you were stationed at a ton of different places across this park service, from, like we kind of mentioned, the Pacific West region headquarters to parks in Hawaii and Alaska, across California. Can you share some memories or moments that stick out to you from those different placements?
I think I've been pretty lucky. So Alaska was my first duty station up in Skagway, Alaska at Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park. For me, I fell in love with Alaska on a personal trip, and it was a goal for me to get to Alaska, and the Park Service was my way to do that. So just kind of formed a lot of my personal passions all in one. So, and California is just this, awe-inspiring just vast, magnificent landscapes and just unbelievable to get a chance to travel around and live up there. That was pretty special. And of course, that's where I met my husband. So extra special too. And so his family still lives up there and we get to go up there and visit at least once a year. So that's been great. I would say one of the very special, unique experiences though was at Kalapapa National Historical Park on Molokai in Hawaii. So that is the former Hansen's disease, the leprosy that was formed. And I was able to live and work with the former patients. So they became my family members and it was an extra special time for me. We were there about 4 years to be able to experience their life and tragedy of what happened to the folks that were sent to that particular site. So it was pretty special to be able to experience that.
4 years is a decent length of time to kind of live in that experience and get to know them. And yeah, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Jumping back to Lassen Volcanic, what has been your favorite experience you've had at the park as a visitor? And I mean, it could have been while you're superintendent, but just, not on duty, working in the office.
All the different hikes that I've been on so far are just really spectacular. And it does offer you the solitude and connecting back with nature. And for me, it became a respite for me during COVID times. And so we would plan trips there just so we could get outside and reconnect with nature and be able to camp in the park and go on hikes. One memory, I don't know if it's my best memory, but it's an interesting memory where, we stayed at the Butte Lake campground and we ended up doing a hike around Snag Lake, which was actually a 14-mile hike. And I actually had COVID and I was recovering from COVID and it was my way to beat COVID. So I definitely tested myself with that. Sure. But at that point, it was, I think, end of June, and we experienced a hailstorm. And it was right after the Dixie Fire. So while we were hiking, we lost the trail, actually, and that was a little nerve-wracking at one point.
Yeah, for sure.
So it taught me a lesson to make sure you bring your map and compass with you so you can find your way back to the trail because, of course, there's no cell service out there. But, we had a good sense of where we were, when we eventually found the trail. But, yeah, it was a long day, to say the least.
Yeah, losing the trail is never necessarily a fun experience. I'm glad you guys made your way back. That's awesome. And it's cool that I've said this a couple of times, but the fact that you came out to the park as a visitor and a recreator and just because you loved it. And then now you get to be making sure it's maintained and stewarded and preserved. So that's a really cool experience.
I feel super lucky for Lassen to be one of my favorite parks and then be able to get to manage it and work with the wonderful team that's there. It's an experience that I never thought I'd be able to get. And I feel super lucky.
Yeah, it's super cool. We've talked a little bit about some of the fire challenges and just how it's kind of a reality that you're facing. But what are some of the other big challenges specific to Lassen Volcanic National Park? At
this point, it's definitely not the most visited park, right? I think we get about 600,000 visitors per year. And of course, that's concentrated in the summertime. So for me, I look at we're at a point where we can prepare for that. Because, there's a lot of parks out there that have just been crushed by visitation and then they're scrambling to figure out how to adjust to that. And I just feel like Lassen's at a point where, visitation will increase and we have an opportunity to kind of plan and see where we can manage and set up expectations. And so to me, that's important. And part of that is, we're working on what's called the Manzanita Lake Site Development Plan. We are currently doing an environmental assessment for that. And so some of that is applying some of the pressures that we've had in the area up there where, there's lots of congestion and the parking lots are overflowing and there's long lines to get into the park. Certainly not as bad as some other parks, but we're definitely at a point where we definitely need to address that. So we're looking to expand parking lots, try to separate, the visitor use from the vehicle use. So it's a better experience for the visitor, a safer experience for the visitors, less impact to our resources. So we're looking at developing, a multi-use pathway to get people off the roads. Like I said, additional parking lots and additional lane to get into the park. We're also looking at increasing accessibility for folks. So one of those things is a natural hardening of the trail around Manzanita Lake. Others can enjoy it. But then that multi-use path could allow for additional wheelchair use or bicycle use because that particular path would be paved to get people from the campground up to what we call the Loomis Plaza, which is where the Loomis Museum is, and the visitor contact stations and whatnot, and the employee bookstore and whatnot. So we're definitely looking to do that. And we're hoping to increase some visitor experience there, where potentially providing a place for additional night sky programs, which at Lassen, we're applying for the night sky certification. So we're hoping to get that soon too. So at Lassen, again, is another great park to experience night sky programs and the night sky. So we're looking to do that up at Manzanita Lake. We actually had an event that we were partnering with NASA in August, but unfortunately that got canceled because of the park fire. But that is something that we've been doing on an annual basis with NASA. So, we're looking to expand upon those kinds of experiences for the visitor.
You mentioned, I think you mentioned it twice, the photographer and the center. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Loomis. Yeah.
Loomis.
He was the naturalist that took a lot of the photographs during the eruptions in the early 1900s. So the Loomis Museum that was created was a draw for showcasing that work. His work helped create the park itself. So he's kind of one of our founding fathers in a sense, where he kind of highlighted and showcased the uniqueness of the area. And so we have a lot of his photography and some of the work that he did back then.
Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures right now, and they're pretty crazy, honestly.
Yeah.
That he was able to, I don't even know how he was able to capture them if he knew that the volcano was going to be erupting.
I know. And would you feel safe? I don't know. I don't know if I would.
I literally had a dream 3 nights ago about a volcano erupting. So could not be me taking those photos. That's for sure. Yeah, that's crazy. I think it's cool that you guys as a park get to be a little bit more proactive rather than retroactively fixing issues. I'm sure that will be a part of it, just as everything. We can't always predict everything, but I think that is a really unique position. And then you had mentioned most of the visitors are concentrated in the summer, but I know we mentioned that Lassen Volcanic gets a ton of snow. So how do people recreate at the park across the seasons?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we still keep, even though the road closes, the north and south ends are still open. So a lot of people cross-country ski. There's snowshoeing that happens. We also do snowshoe ranger-led tours from the southern entrance. This is kind of a fun little thing where at the southern entrance at the parking lot there, along with the snowshoeing, a lot of families come up and they sled. They'll park in the parking lot and they kind of tailgate for the day. When it's a bright, sunny winter day, they'll come up and they tailgate, they go sledding. Some people go snowshoeing, some people cross-country ski. There's definitely a more hardy spirit of people who do backcountry skiing. So that's definitely a tradition at Lassen Volcanic National Park. We used to have a ski lift that was run by a concession. And so you'll have to look at the historical photos on that. It's kind of fun, but it wasn't feasible in the end. But the operation was open up until the 1990s actually.
Really?
But that was removed. The ski lodge was kind of in the same location where our current visitor center is located on the southwest side there.
It was saying lift tickets were $5, which just shows how expensive skiing has gotten over the years.
Yeah. Right.
$5. Absolutely. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'd be skiing every day if that was the case.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's super interesting. So are there remnants of the ski areas or the ski lifts still there?
There's some archaeology remnants that if you hiked up above there's still a little bit of that. It's not quite obvious unless you go find it.
You know about it.
Yep,
that's cool.
Yep.
Do you have to get permits for the backcountry skiing or?
That's a good question about the skiing part. That time of year, we definitely need backcountry permits for the summertime when people go backpacking, but I'm going to have to find that out. So
yeah,
that would make sense. But, I think a lot of that is close by to where you would park for the Southwest Visitor Center. So a lot of people are doing it as a day type thing. Event. Well, so that wouldn't necessarily be needed, but some people do do some multi-day excursions in the wintertime. So
yeah, so it's on my bucket list to do some snow camping. It's one of those things that sounds sort of miserable, but also intriguing because it's a new experience. So yeah, I can see most people would do day trips.
I definitely would be into that too. There's some beautiful sunny days up there, especially as you get towards the springtime. But of course, then you have to be avalanche savvy. So that's another twist to being prepared when you go out into the backcountry.
Yeah, I've done one backcountry ski trip before, and my like biggest takeaway from it was because I hadn't really ever been snowshoeing, and so I was just blown away of like, oh my gosh, it's literally like hiking in the winter. Like you're just
Yep.
hiking, and it's like this like winter wonderland,
Right.
especially when it's a blue sky and it's nice out. It's a different
Hmm.
story when there's a snowstorm and it's really cold and
Hmm.
you're a little miserable, but
Yep.
it was just unlocking this thing. I was like, oh my gosh, you can hike in the winter. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Yeah. I can't wait because since I started in May, I got there at the very tail end. Well, the tail end of our road clearing operation. So I wasn't able to enjoy the park, in its winter wonderland state.
Right.
So I'm looking to do that this upcoming
Yeah.
winter.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that'll be really awesome. Can you share more about like how your search and rescue team is
Mm-hmm.
organized across the different seasons and kind of the majority of the rescues, like how they're concentrated?
There's about 15 to 20 a year. We do have sledding accidents, so we got to tell people that,
Yeah.
there still is a risk to that. We do have issues with that. But I would say it is concentrated in the summertime in the fact that, that's probably where the bulk of things are happening. And a lot of it's the slips and falls and sprained ankles. And unfortunately, some of them happen where at Kings Creek, where there's, steps and it's kind of rugged. And so sometimes they need to be helicoptered out. But, our team definitely, they're EMTs and they're trained in getting to them, assessing them, and then getting them out and sent off to higher level care. But yeah, so the majority probably is those slips and falls and then some sledding accidents. And then, in general, too, it's folks just being aware that, a lot of our hikes are at higher altitude. There's altitude sickness and altitude related issues for
Right.
folks, heart issues. So it's definitely people knowing they need to be prepared and what their limitations are when they come out into our area. So
I took a wilderness first responder course through Knowles a couple weeks ago.
nice. Oh,
And so
nice.
it's not to the level of EMT, but it's definitely the whole
Mm-hmm.
idea of it is, like you said, assessing and getting someone to a higher level of care. And like they stressed a lot, you do not need to be diagnosing, but you need to be determining like, is this worthy of an evacuation? Yes or no. And
Yep,
then it's
definitely.
hard, like you said, of having to be helicoptered out just because of the remoteness. And it's like you could be
Mm-hmm.
15 miles from a trailhead, and if you have a broken
Right.
leg, that's kind of the only option rather than having people carry you out 15 miles.
Sure.
One thing I realized I forgot to ask about earlier, this is outside of Lassen Volcanic, but I saw that you actually worked for a winery in Sonoma. And can you share, that's more just a curiosity, I'd love to hear about that experience. And you've seen,
Yeah.
and just a quick note is you've seen a lot of really cool and beautiful aspects of the state of California, it seems like.
Yeah, again, super lucky, I think. I definitely did a detour in my career, but when it comes to my career, I've made career choices with that, say no regrets. Wine for me, it was always tied to travel and food. So it's always been a side passion of mine. And when I was able to live in Sonoma County, I started taking wine courses at our junior college.
Cool.
And I just, it was a hobby for me. And then I was like, you know what? I want to see if I can do this.
Yeah.
And so I did take a hiatus from the Park Service for 5 years. And I ended up working for a winery in Dry Creek Valley in Sonoma County. And I was their sales manager and tasting room manager. And it was a fabulous experience. And I think, it was a lot of fun. It was absolutely fun. And for me, my takeaways and what helped me, I think, as I moved back into the Park Service was that, I managed a large staff from people from 18 to 80 years old, and I had to motivate them. And that was actually a lot of fun. And we put on a lot of events, and just the crazy that spins around that was intense and fun. And then the customer service aspect of it all really is like, I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed being in that industry because you do get to learn about how to deal with customers and make them happy. And those skills I transferred over into the Park Service, because even though we're a land management agency, we still are in the tourism business and the hospitality business. And there's a component of that and a marketing aspect of that I've taken those skills and applied them where I can in the Park Service. So I think it's been kind of fun, even though they're two totally different things. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
I'm working on an additional segment called Park Enthusiasts, which is interviewing people just in the outdoor space and kind of understanding how the national parks and how outdoor public lands have affected them and shaped their lives and their careers and stuff like that. And I got to interview the Knowles CEO, if you know Knowles.
Cool. Yeah.
And
Great.
he was talking about how like all these kind of offshoot experiences that seemed somewhat random actually built the skill set that allowed him to be Knowles president and CEO. And you made me think of that with talking about the winery, of
Mm-hmm.
how like a seemingly totally unrelated industry, like
Mm-hmm.
there were skill sets that weave into the park service and that customer service aspect, I think. And I like how you said the marketing piece, because I feel like the parks, or there is more conversation around going to a more diverse range of parks, because the Yellowstones, the Grand Tetons, the Grand Canyon are like so crowded and see so many people. And it's like, hey, we have a huge park service, like with so many
Right.
sites, and they're all
Absolutely.
preserved for their magnificence and their austereness. And so I felt that learning about Lassen Volcanic, I was like, well, this gotta go there now. It's as I
Mm-hmm.
pursue this project, the list is just getting much too long of places I want to go, because pretty much every superintendent I talk to, I'm like, that sounds awesome. I want to go
Yep.
there. So
Yep.
that's cool.
Yep.
You've talked about a lot of it is forward thinking of like some of the partnerships you're looking forward to with some of the like partner tribes and stuff like that. Are there any other collaborative efforts with local communities that you're working on, or any kind
Mm-hmm.
of different educational programs that Lassen Volcanic pursues?
Yeah, there's a couple different things we're doing. We are participants in the two watershed groups that are formed, and they're part of the local communities, as well as other federal agencies, including the Forest Service and nonprofits. So those watershed groups are also heavily engaged in fire management. So that's a big piece, like I had mentioned that we're doing, and fire resiliency, the hardening, defensible space, prescribed burns. That's all part of what we're doing with those groups. And then one of our great unique partnerships, we do have a friends group, which is our philanthropic partner, the Lassen Park Foundation. We partnered with them to fundraise for our youth adventure camp. So it's the Volcano Adventure Camp. And so that's a part of our park, and that was established in 2016. So what that does is it's a summer camp, and we focus on youth groups anywhere from the ages of 6 to 18. And really one of their goals is to find underserved youth groups. And typically, we've been working with a lot of groups in Northern California, but as well as Nevada and Southern Oregon as well. But certainly, they're not limited to that geographic area, but we allow for them to apply for grants that the Lassen Park Foundation provides, up to $1,000 per group, to be able to come and experience camping and being in the outdoors and experience nature. And a lot of these groups, it's their first experience either camping or being out in a national park. That's one of the top things that they fundraise for.
That's so cool.
And and it's a really great opportunity. And the site itself has these canvas tent cabins, and there's, cookhouses, and so they have a space to go and just be with their groups. And then another really great piece of this is that our park rangers are actively involved, and they help do orientations. They provide educational opportunities. They'll do hikes for them if they want, and they teach the leave no trace principles. So our rangers definitely engage with each of the groups that come out there. So that, to me, I think is kind of a unique thing. And we try to, because a lot of these typical groups tend to like bring in their own educators, but we ourselves are actively involved in the education of the group. So I think it's a really great partnership that we're doing with them. And for me, it's a little selfish for me, where I'm excited about the outreach that we do with them, because we need to find the next generation to work in our national parks. And to me, if you're inspired at that young age, then you can learn about okay, so what kind of careers can I go into to work in the Park Service? And I think there's so many different opportunities, whether it's business or science or interpretation and education, or even the visitor resource and protection, law enforcement side of things, and maintenance. So there's so many different avenues the younger generation can kind of tap into. And I'm going to use that adventure camp as my way to help recruit and do outreach to find the next generation of folks to lead our parks.
I haven't heard of a camp like that. So that's super cool, because I talked to a lot of the superintendents about different friends groups and how they work with the parks and stuff like that. So that's super unique. And then something that stuck out to me in interviewing a lot of the superintendents is not pretty much, a lot of them did like something like SCA, Student
Hmm.
Conservation Association
Hmm.
or something similar along those lines when they were in
Hmm.
high school or college. And then that obviously dictated them to have a career, a lifelong
Right.
career in the Park Service. And
Hmm.
I don't think I knew about parks, but I don't even think
Right.
I like had even thought about or had even comprehended that one could work
Yes.
in a park when I was in high
Yes.
school or college. And
Right.
like, like you said, no regrets. I'm not like sitting here like, I should have been a park ranger. But it's like, man, that's,
I
I wish I
know.
knew about that, even just as an option
I feel the
to
same way,
pursue.
and that's the whole like marketing piece that, I kind of got interested in for the Park Service because I feel like we could do a better job. And for me, by the time college age, it's almost too late to capture those people who are going down these different paths to like
Oh,
cast the net and try to, get them to
well,
come and work for the Park Service.
I was already in I was in the business school. And so I was already on that pre-described track by the time I hit college, or I guess when I was like looking for a job and
Hmm.
everything. So that's an
Yep.
interesting perspective of, like you said, yeah,
Yep.
it's almost too late. You need to like reach the kids and find that inspiration when they're like in middle school or high school.
For any industry these days, it's super hard to recruit and to find enough
Mm-hmm.
applicants. And for me, I always feel like tapping into the local community is the best way to grow our applicant pool. And I find over and over again that there's so many students out there that don't know about us. And
Mm-hmm.
so a big thing for me, and it is one of my goals over the next year or two, is to increase our outreach, and utilizing that volcano adventure camp is one
Mm-hmm.
way, but also going into the schools and doing career days and whatnot for our local communities, I think is definitely one thing that I want to expand upon.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm even thinking because I grew up in Austin and it's like Austin's not super close to any national parks, but I'm thinking like Big Bend or Guadalupe Mountains. Like if they
Hmm.
like did outreach in the state of Texas, I haven't talked to that superintendent yet. I'm sure they're doing a lot in that area already. But yeah, I am excited for you for that to kind of
Yeah.
better reach the local communities. That's
Hmm.
really awesome. Well, I have two questions that I tend to ask every superintendent. One is just a fun, silly one, and then one is more about Lassen Volcanic. The silly one is, what is your favorite snack for camping or hiking?
Oh man. Well, when it's car camping, there's a difference, right?
Oh, 100%.
My husband and I get extravagant, so we'll make stir fries or
Oh, yum.
like shrimp packets and put them on the coals of the fire, like or fajitas or something fun like that.
Yeah.
But then when I'm backpacking or hiking, it's usually involves anything with peanuts because I like the protein and the
Right.
salt, and like I try to be healthy, but it's so hard because a
It's
Snickers
hard
bar really,
backpacking.
like, you reward yourself when you get to the top of that hill, and it involves like a really bad for you candy bar, right?
Yeah. The I mean, I love peanut butter and jellies, and I had them as a kid growing up all the time, but I do not have them that much as an adult. Pretty much every time I go hiking, I have a peanut butter and jelly at the top of like the mountain or,
Yep.
when we're turning around or whatever. So I understand that.
Hmm.
Or backpacking, I feel like when I did it in college with our group, we would bring a packet of Oreos, and that would kind of be the like after dinner snack that you would pass around.
Yeah. Oh,
But it's
that's
like
fun.
everyone's rationed to get like one or two.
Yes,
So,
rationing is important, right?
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then what is something that you wish everyone knew about Lassen Volcanic National Park, regardless of if they have or have not been?
Being prepared before you come, because just this last couple weeks and months, go to our app and make sure it's updated and be aware of the different alerts that are up there, because we had to close the road one day because of the snow last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to close because of the fire. And so that to me is, I hate disappointing our visitors. So I
Yeah.
think to be able to have them be as prepared as possible ahead of time so they're not disappointed, that's super important. But I also would say come to have your mind blown, because it is this unexpected, beautiful park that is this crazy wild road through the park with no guardrails, and these vistas that are amazing, and these wonderful hikes that are really accessible even for the novice hiker. It's a special place to be
Yeah.
discovered for sure.
The two things with that. The first is the National Park Service has some crazy roads, and one of them, I haven't been to Lassen Volcanic yet, but like the minute you said that no guardrails, I was thinking of the Going to the Sun Road in Glacier.
Mm-hmm.
If you've done that one, and that one's terrifying, and it's like 2-lane. It's just insane for anyone who's been there. And the other piece with like the messaging and checking the app, it kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier with marketing of like kind of just setting these expectations of like, these are natural places and things happen. And it's not necessarily like you can go on Google Maps and see if it's open or closed like a restaurant. And so it's just like making it a part of kind of your planning and your preparation and your literally day of journey of like checking the status, the park. So that's a good tidbit. I haven't thought about that before.
Yes. And you can download specific parks. So they'll be available offline because in many parks, of course, you lose connectivity, right?
Yeah. Like right as you're rolling up, you're like, oh, no, I'll download it. And it's like, no, you have to do it before. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing about your personal and professional experiences at Lassen Volcanic Park and across the Park Service.
Thank you. It's great to share. And I still think Lassen is a hidden gem. And so hopefully it can still be a hidden gem. And the people that get to experience it will be blown away.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Maddie.
Thanks so much for listening today. Who Runs This Park is presented by Expert Voice. Our music was composed by Danielle Bees. Don't forget to subscribe down below and tell your friends about it. This ensures that we can continue telling the stories of our national parks. Check out everything Who Runs This Park does at Linktree/Who Runs This Park. That's linktr.ee/Who Runs This Park. I'm Maddie Pellman, and you've been listening to Who Runs This Park.